Thank you, President Fiordaliso. He's there, I can see him. So first of all, congratulations, President, for I saw that insider NJ Power ranking yesterday. So we are so grateful that you are there in the list and you are speaking via Zoom. So President Fiordaliso was born and raised in the iron-bound section of Newark, New Jersey. He served as a commissioner on the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities since 2005 when he was nominated by Governor Richard Codey and confirmed by the Senate. In 2011 and 2013, President Fiordaliso was renominated by Governor Chris Christie and confirmed by the Senate to continue as Commissioner of NJBPU. President Fiordaliso is a cabinet member in Governor Murphy's administration. On January 15, 2018, he was appointed by Governor Phil Murphy to serve as president of NJBPU. He was appointed as a member of the State Planning Commission on December 21, 2018, and serves as co-chair on the NJ Council on the Green Economy, chair of Broadband Commission. He also serves on the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, Committee on Critical Infrastructure, and Committee on Energy Resources and the Environment. He is a member of the Executive Committee for the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, REGGI's Strategic Communication Team, is a member of Mid-Atlantic Conference of Regulatory Utilities Commission, is a member of the National Council on Electricity Policy, and many others. We are so glad to have him speak via Zoom, and thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And first, let me apologize for not being with you in person. I guess this is the next best thing. Since you are all very intelligent people, maybe you can figure out a way of having me in two places at the same time, because I haven't been able to figure that out, even though I am a Montclair State graduate. I graduated as a business education major in Montclair State. I won't tell you the year. You can look that up. And it's been a few years. And a few years where, just to give you an idea, Sprague Library wasn't even there yet. And they had to blast the mountains away in order to build Sprague Library and in order to build many of the buildings that now occupy and are a major part of Montclair State University. So I'm very proud of being an alum, and I'm very proud of the fact that you invited me and to speak, and thank you for your hospitality that you have always shown when I have participated in conferences with you. This is a place where I have so many happy memories, and most importantly, where I received a world-class invitation. I actually met my wife at Montclair State, and we've been married now for 54 years. So Montclair was a great foundation for me. Since Governor Murphy took office in 2018, the urgency of action to address climate change has escalated. A special report from the United Nations last year has called this a code red for humanity. The climate change is a code red for humanity, which requires our urgent attention and our aggressive action. It is vital we continue moving forward to implement the governor's clean energy vision. Offshore wind is one of the cornerstones of New Jersey's clean energy program. In fact, a couple of months ago, the governor expanded the goal of our offshore wind program to 11 gigawatts by 2040, setting the highest goal of any state in the nation. Right now, we have awarded about 3.7 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity through 3 projects in our first 2 solicitations, and there is the promise of much more. A third solicitation is scheduled for the first quarter of 2023 for at least 1.2 gigawatts. We are very excited about the progress of our program, and we anticipate updating the solicitation schedule to align with the governor's new higher goal very soon. And we have to keep in mind when we're talking about clean energy, and it's something that's not, in my opinion, frequently talked about. Clean energy not only generates and reduces our carbon footprint, but it also promotes good health, particularly in our inner cities. The cleaner the air, the healthier people are. Secondly, the economic enhancements that clean energy brings to our state. And that's extremely important. We expect hundreds and hundreds of jobs. We expect and are working toward making New Jersey the supply chain for the entire East Coast wind industry. This is very exciting stuff. We're actually bringing manufacturing back to New Jersey. Manufacturing that will support the offshore wind industry. I can't remember the last time we brought manufacturing back to our state. So we're looking at multiple advantages from clean energy. And it's not only from wind, it's from solar. We have over 160,000 solar installations here in the state of New Jersey. The solar industry employs over 7,000 people. We created this industry, we being the state of New Jersey and the Board of Public Utilities, back in the early 2000s. And it has grown and matured and has provided economic enhancement to our state. The first of its kind approach was initiated by New Jersey with PJM. PJM is our regional transmission organization, where 13 states and the District of Columbia are members. It's the largest such organization in transmission in the world. We entered into an agreement called the State Agreement Approach, and it's the first of its kind here in the state of, or here in the United States. It has helped to identify the most cost-effective, environmentally sensitive, and ready-to-build means of bringing that renewable energy onshore. We can have all the turbines we want out off the coast, but we have to get the power onshore. And we're always looking for the most prudent and economic way to enhance our clean energy industry. It's vitally important because you and I as taxpayers, you and I as ratepayers are paying for this. The state agreement approach incorporates a state public policy goal into PJM's transmission expansion plan process. After more than a year of evaluation, Board of Public Utilities recently approved staff's recommendation to select Mid-Atlantic Offshore Development and JCP&L to develop a project designed to accommodate the wind industry generated offshore in a cost-effective and responsible manner, which is going to save you and I as ratepayers millions of dollars. By limiting the number of shore crossings and corridors, we are limiting the environmental and community impacts associated with large-scale transmission projects. We are grateful for PJM's partnership and expertise throughout this process. The benefits of our offshore wind program are not only environmental, as I said, they're also economic. We're building a wind port down in Lower Alloways Creek. Windport will include more than 200 acres of purpose-built space for manufacturing and marshaling, and is expected to produce another $500 million in economic activity as we establish New Jersey as the East Coast hub of the U.S. offshore wind industry. The port is a prime location due to its unobstructed access to the Atlantic. The state also invested $250 million in a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility to build the monopile foundation for the turbines. That's the foundation where the turbine actually goes in. For the turbines that will serve the nation's offshore wind industry. They're not only going to be the monopiles for New Jersey, but for other states that are engaged in the offshore wind industry. The facility at Paulsboro Marine Terminal will create more than 500 high-paying jobs and is currently under construction. We have made a substantial investment in the workforce development to ensure that we have well-trained employees to fill the many jobs. We're working with every department here in the state of New Jersey because it has to be an entire government approach. Department of Labor with workforce development, as one example. The board has also taken creative, positive steps toward ensuring wind energy that can easily come ashore and into the existing grid, which may require grid modernization, grid enhancement. I have this recurring dream where we have all these turbines out in the ocean, and we have all this energy being generated coming on shore, but we have no place to, quote, plug it in. So we're working very closely with our utilities to ensure the fact that we have a place to plug this energy into. Vitally important. The Economic Development Authority has been a constant partner with us. Department of Environmental Protection has been a constant partner with us in securing the best possible approach to offshore wind. Last week, we accepted a consultant's report on grid modernization, and we will begin 2 proceedings to improve the state's interconnection process, both in the short and long term. Other recent highlights from our clean energy program include launching year 3 of our Charge Up New Jersey electric vehicle program, which to date has provided incentives for more than 13,000 electric vehicles, a new home charger incentive program, along with new application cycles for our 3 electric vehicle and electric vehicle charging programs. Why are we concentrated on transportation? 40%. Let me repeat that because it's a large number. 40% of our carbon emissions come from transportation. Every time you and I get in to a gas combustion vehicle and drive on Route 3 or Route 46 or the Parkway or the Turnpike, we are contributing to that 40%. So we're not only looking at personal vehicles, we're also looking at mid and large vehicles, trucks as an example, buses. If we're going to reduce our carbon footprint, transportation has to be one of the key areas that we attack. We have also taken important steps to enable our aging housing stock to become more energy efficient, particularly in our urban areas. We recently launched the Whole House program with a pilot program in Trenton to help improve homes in underserved communities that have health and safety issues. We read about every single day lead paint in older homes that affect young children. We read about lead water pipes that affect each and every one of us. These are things that have to be remediated. These are things that, for the health of the 9.3 million people who live in this state, have to be corrected. And we are attacking those areas as well. We're also doing more and more work in energy storage. We have to be able to store some of that energy for when it's not being generated sufficiently. Last year, the board approved 100 applications to participate in program year 2 of our community solar energy program. Our belief is that every New Jersey should have an opportunity to participate in the clean energy revolution that we're currently experiencing, and that will continue for many years. It should not be only for those who can afford to put solar on their rooftop, as an example. Community solar serves low and moderate income individuals, primarily in the inner cities. And again, it will provide a cleaner environment. New Jersey has some of the highest asthma rates in the country, generally found in our inner cities. Community solar helps, enhances the health of each and every one of us. So we save money on health costs. So we're not only generating clean energy, ladies and gentlemen, we're also improving, hopefully, the health of our citizenry. We're also enhancing the economic activity within our state. There are so many positive aspects to generating clean energy. And there are the naysayers out there, without question. There are some very powerful forces out there who don't want us to succeed. But for the health of our planet, we have to succeed. Future generations are going to judge us on how well we deal with climate change. If we drop the ball, we will be held accountable. Future generations, your children, your grandchildren, and subsequent generations will feel the traumatic effects of climate change more than we are today. And we are noticing, of course, changes in our climate. I commend Montclair State and all of those who helped organize this clean energy conference. Montclair State is taking the lead here in the state of New Jersey with its research, with advancing awareness of the need for clean energy. The Board of Public Utilities efforts in support of the governor's vision, whether it's our offshore wind program, our solar program, electric vehicle incentives, energy efficiency, or building decarbonization, we are helping to build a cleaner environment, a stronger and fairer New Jersey for all who call it home today and future generations. By investing in our clean energy workforce, infrastructure now, we can create thousands of jobs. And those naysayers and those powerful forces are going to say, this is too expensive. I submit that we don't have a choice. As far as I know, now, unless you know something different, as far as I know, this is the only piece of real estate we can live on. So we better make darn sure that we do everything humanly possible to mitigate the effects of climate change. We have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. With programs like Montclair State Center for Clean Energy and Sustainability Analytics Center, I know we will get there and leave the planet better for our children and grandchildren and subsequent generations. With your help, with your advocacy, we will overcome those naysayers. We will defeat those powerful forces because we have no other choice. I want to thank you once again for the opportunity to be with you, even though it's through Zoom, for your attention and for the work that you do and for the work that Montclair State University does in making climate change a priority and finding solutions to making our world, our state, better. So thank you and keep up the good fight.
Thank you, President Fiordaliso, for such inspiring words.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Laura Billings, Dean of the College of Science and Mathematics. We are also proud co-sponsors of this event and the Clean Energy and Sustainability Analytics Center. We're also very proud of our partnership with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and I'm so happy to introduce the next speaker. Sean Moriarty leads the Department of Environmental Protection's internal legal team and serves as its general counsel on all matters of regulatory compliance and rulemaking, and will oversee the newly created Office of Enforcement Policy. He is also a member of the Commissioner's executive team, providing input on priority initiatives that include climate change and environmental justice. Previously, Mr. Moriarty served as Chief Advisor for Regulatory and Legislative Affairs. He also served as a regulatory officer with the Bureau of Legal Services and Stewardship for the DEP's Green Acres program. Mr. Moriarty received both his undergraduate and law degrees from Rutgers University. Please help me welcome Mr. Sean Moriarty.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I now have to stare at this awful picture of me for the entire time I talk. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here. As the Dean said, I'm Sean Moriarty, Deputy Commissioner at DEP, also known as the other Sean to everyone that I ever meet in my entire life from now on. But it is always reassuring to come to these types of forums and see the commitment and enthusiasm that people have for tackling the most important issues of our lifetime, and particularly today's topic, climate change. Also known as the single greatest threat to our environment, our people, our communities, our economy, and our way of life. Some of what I'll say today will echo what the good President Joe said, but that's because it's critically important that we say it over and over again until we make the changes necessary to deliver us from a pretty unenjoyable fate. As a low-lying state with dense population and development patterns, New Jersey is ground zero for adverse climate impacts, from increased rainfall and storm intensity to worsening urban heat island effects to seas likely to rise by 2 feet in the next 30 years and perhaps as much as 5 feet in the next 80. Couple that with 20 to 50% increases in precipitation by the end of this century, worse in the areas where we are today, and the picture of the adverse environmental and public health impacts that we're facing quickly comes into focus. As the New Jersey Scientific Report on Climate Change confirms, as atmospheric levels of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases increase, New Jersey will continue to experience significant direct and secondary changes to our environment, including increases in temperature, variability in precipitation, frequency and intensity of storms, sea level rise, ocean acidification, and the associated impacts to our ecological systems, natural resources, human health, and the economy. All of this serving as a threat multiplier in low-income communities and communities of color that are already subject to disproportionate impacts to their health and environment. So this, of course, highlights the need and the importance of our transition to renewable energy sources. You've heard it already. If you're here, you probably heard it. President Joe already said it, code red, right? We are out of time. So we're out of time to talk about it. How do we act? The first thing we do is set goals. We've done that already. 2007's Global Warming Response Act calls for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 80% of our baseline year 2006 by 2050, and we're working towards an interim benchmark of 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 under executive order from Governor Murphy. 100% clean energy by 2050 is set forth in the EMP, 11,000 megawatts of wind power by 2040, 32 gigawatts of solar power by 2050, 100% electric cars by 2050. To meet these goals, of course, you need plans. As the EMP sets forth the pathway for clean energy, the Global Warming Response Act's 80 by 50 report, authored by people in this room, hey Bob, provides the state roadmap to assist in crafting initiatives needed to meet the 80 by 50 emissions reduction goals. It recognizes that while New Jersey has made significant progress in reducing emissions, in large part due to our rapid transition away from coal-powered energy generation, achieving our 80 by 50 goal requires an increased commitment through additional policy and regulatory changes to replace most current applications of fossil fuels with renewable energy alternatives within the next 30 years, within the lifetime of a mortgage that you might get today, just to put it in terms that everyone understands. The report goes through specific strategies for each sector: transportation, residential and commercial, electric generation, industrial waste and agriculture, as well as discussing techniques and strategies to address short-lived climate pollutants and carbon sequestration recommendations. The overlap between the actions set forth in the EMP to reach 100% clean energy, as well as those called for under the GW 80 by 50 report, is quite clear. From the reduction in fossil fuel consumption and GHG emissions in our transportation sector, to maximizing energy efficiency and reducing consumption in our building sector, to our efforts to accelerate deployment of renewable energy sources, each is a key part of the overall puzzle of what we need to do to accomplish our twin goals. Both the EMP and the GWRA call for broad, fundamental changes across multiple sectors. With 42% of our greenhouse gas emissions coming from the transportation sector, our largest emitting sector, we need to get to those 100% electric vehicle sales for passenger cars by 2035, with 50% heavy duty and 75% of our medium duty truck sales by 2050. Those are big changes. We've got to keep moving. In the residential and commercial sectors, which is 24% of our emissions, we need to electrify our heating in our buildings and make them all more energy efficient. Speaking to the dean earlier, work that this university is doing to benchmark their energy consumption so they can understand where their gaps lie, understand where their liabilities are, and then take the steps. We all need to be doing that now. That work probably should have happened already in most of us, but we're now getting to it. Now we need to start continuing to do that on every building we own and every asset we have and finding those opportunities. With those goals and plans, the next step is, of course, turning them into action, starting with clean renewable energy projects. As we mentioned, we've increased our offshore wind target from 7,500 megawatts to 11,000 megawatts by 2040. The offshore wind will deliver clean, renewable energy generation that's needed to meet the state's goals. DEP, as the steward of our natural resources, we're tasked with balancing the development of offshore wind with protecting our natural resources. We're currently reviewing the Ocean Wind's first permit application, looking at plans for the wind port, as well as work being done down at the port of Paulsboro to support the offshore wind supply chain. All of these things are very exciting. We're always focused on the science, right? But we also acknowledge that there are some things about offshore wind that we don't know yet. There are gaps that we need to fill. Partnered with BPU, we're working on New Jersey's Research and Monitoring Initiative, which we refer to as RMI. RMI, funded by two offshore wind developers, Atlantic Shores and Ocean Wind 2, something that I doubt we've asked most of our fossil fuel developers to do in the past, has each collectively provided $26 million to help New Jersey identify and pursue various resource priorities related to offshore wind. We've selected a number of projects so far in just this last year, including research related to potential impacts of offshore wind to surf clam abundance, socioeconomics of recreational fishing, acoustic telemetry, got that right, to track the presence and movements of marine animals and certain fish species, just to name a few. And there are other projects under development. To further ensure that the natural resources that we strive to protect are protected through all stages of offshore wind development, and as well as generation, we're continuing to make assessments and understanding of those impacts on our fishing industry and the conservation community. That remains a priority for the department. We've led a group of 9 states pursuing regional compensation losses for fishermen to include as part of the development of offshore wind. This multi-state collaboration has been quite successful, with BOEM and NOAA working together to publish draft guidance on the subject. And this state collective, the 9 kind of East Coast states, are now tackling how these funds should be administered. Ultimately, our goal is to establish a credible regional administrator for managing and distributing fisheries compensatory mitigation funds for offshore wind across the U.S. seaboard. Folks who are interested in this topic should expect further engagement stakeholders over the next several months, as we're still in the early stages of planning, but hold this very, very close to our mission. As the President also talked about, we partnered with our friends at BPU and EDA to jumpstart development of the offshore wind industry, which will obviously continue to further reduce GHGs, help our clean energy transition, and as the President mentioned, continue to facilitate growth of New Jersey's innovation economy by providing green jobs. We've embarked on a whole of government effort to establish New Jersey as the regional hub on the East Coast for all the offshore wind supply chain. Investments across the East Coast are anticipated to exceed over $150 billion through 2035, and we're positioning ourselves to lead with historic investments in port infrastructure, workforce development, clean tech innovation, including the wind port, as we said. The wind port will provide 200 acres of essential staging, assembly, and manufacturing activities for East Coast offshore wind supply, and is expected to generate $500 million in economic activity annually. That's how you transition to a green economy. And let's not forget solar, where we continue to partner with BPU to facilitate solar development opportunities. We've created a solar siting tool and continue to update that solar siting tool, which I can identify on a parcel by parcel basis across the state the places that are best suited for solar development. And we're working to modernize our regulatory structures and our policies to better ensure that development can occur in these preferred areas, namely landfills and contaminated sites. Fortunately for solar development, we don't lack in those. Other reasons we might be unfortunate, but we have plenty of places to develop solar. With the recent announcement of an MOU with New York and Connecticut, we're also working collectively to pursue federal funding to establish a hydrogen hub to allow us to pursue and develop this promising potential of green hydrogen. The bottom line on renewable energy is DEP is committed to expanding the industry in New Jersey while steadfastly maintaining our own mission of environmental protection. On transportation, as we said, the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, moving forward in this area will require a combination of efforts by all levels of government, all sectors of our economy, from policy to regulations to educational resources to financial incentives. To date, we focus largely on EVs, specifically in our overburdened communities. We're implementing a suite of strategies to increase the number of electric vehicles on the road, the number available for purchase, and critically, to ensure that there is sufficient electric vehicle infrastructure to support the growth of this sector. By rejoining RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, we've generated more than $90 million for electrification of New Jersey's transportation sector. That translates to 245 electric buses, shuttle buses, public works vehicles, and delivery trucks on the road now, replacing those vehicles that would be the most pollution-generating diesel fuel vehicles in our state, many of which you find themselves more often than not in our overburdened communities. So we're stacking benefits on top of each other: clean energy, clean air, OBC, benefiting low-income communities of color in those communities. Through this and other complementary efforts and incentives, we increased electric vehicles on the road by over 300% already. We're also continuing to aggressively pursue additional funding from our federal partners for fast charging corridors, community charging, and buses, among other things. Beyond that, there's obviously significant progress to be made to enhance public transportation opportunities. and to otherwise reduce VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. There is no one size fits all. These answers are not delivered exclusively on the back of electric vehicles. Now that we've made progress on EVs over the last several years, we can turn our focus more completely to our residential and commercial sectors. Again, 24% of our emissions. And we need to electrify our heating and make those buildings more efficient. The Governor's Office of Climate Action and the Green Economy, with support from BPU and the Rocky Mountain Institute, just this week convened the first meeting of the New Jersey Clean Buildings Working Group. That working group will help guide the state's strategic roadmap to clean buildings, laying out recommendations for policy, legislative, workforce, and funding strategies to create cleaner, greener buildings that will support and benefit New Jersey families and workers. This 12-month process includes representatives from organized labor, utilities, industry, building science, environmental justice communities, workforce development, and members of state government. This effort builds off things we've already done, including energy appliance standards, collaborative efforts to upgrade our building codes across agencies, and the energy efficiency programs that the President talked about earlier, as well as benchmarking and transitioning some of our state buildings to cleaner technologies. This also includes efforts by the Council on the Green Economy to develop strategies to expand access to green jobs, increase workforce development, and grow our innovation ecosystem. The recent report, Green Jobs for a Sustainable Future, that report is now available, lays out some key recommendations on how we get there. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job as a representative of DAP if I didn't talk at least for a second about regulations. That's what we do. We live in a land of regulations, so I have to do that, right? I get paid to do that. So while regulation alone won't be successful, carefully calibrated, balanced, and complementary regulatory structures can also spur progress. So under our first phase of our climate pollutant reduction regulatory initiatives, we've pursued several key regulatory pieces of regulatory change. We've adopted California's clean truck rules, which has standards for the manufacture of certain zero-emission commercial vehicles. We've adopted an updated GHG reporting rule, which allows us to identify significant sources of GHG emissions, monitor progress, and develop additional strategies to reduce, including closing reporting gaps on HFCs and fossil fuel infrastructure leakage. We've proposed a cargo handling rule modeled after California regulations to require diesel mobile cargo handling equipment at our ports to apply best control technology while zero-emission technology continues to become more affordable. We also proposed an omnibus rule, which is focused on setting stronger nitrogen limits on medium and heavy-duty vehicles and closing inspection loopholes on medium-duty vehicles. Both those last two have significant co-pollutant benefits, particularly in overburdened communities. And lastly, we're on the verge of adopting regulations to set CO2 emission limits across our electric generating units that will ratchet down over time in line with the progress on our renewable energy, ultimately incentivize transition to electric boilers and reduce certain heavy fuels. Lastly, we're doing our best to lead by example. We can't tell you all what to do if we're not willing to do it ourselves. This year, we added electric fleets to our vehicles, and just this month we installed solar panel charging stations at DEP headquarters to provide infrastructure to encourage our own employees to make the transition to electric. I was surprised to see those things in the back of the parking lot when I got to work one day, and I was like, oh, that's really good. Nice job, guys. With 2 BPU grants, we're also working to install electric vehicle charging stations in parks across the state, expanding our EV infrastructure to eliminate barriers to purchasing electric vehicles. And we're also conducting a department-wide assessment of all of our assets to identify clean energy and efficiency opportunities. We're benchmarking our operations and looking for steps that we can take to build clean energy capacity within our own portfolio and reduce emissions. So that's a lot. So where do we go from here? Forward. That's the only option we have. But as we progress, the challenges become different, if not more difficult. We've made tremendous strides, thanks to the work with folks like yourselves, to raise awareness and acceptance of the path that our future must follow to keep our state what it is. The next step is the transition from awareness and progress in these very broad areas to localized, project-specific, and individual choices. That's where we need to go next. It's the choices that we make every day. And we have to make those choices, whatever our position is, whether we're making in our personal life, as a leader, whatever we're doing. We have to make those decisions with the confidence that the choices that we make today, while they might not yield the immediate benefits, we might not get the credit, they will decide our fate. And whether we will together, as the President said, deliver a brighter future for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and truly the generations to come. This is the opportunity we have to save the state of New Jersey for the future. I ask each of you to take that on in your individual lives. Thank you. Happy to take questions. I give you 10. Yes. Because I will run away.
Yeah, you mentioned like transportation sector.
Yes.
Talking on the nature of electric vehicles potentially being also harmful to the environment with like South American, you know, you have to mine for certain minerals for those batteries and things like that. Also with a lot of these vehicles you're plugging in to the grid. So what's the kind of drive towards solar panel charging versus how much of those cars, if we transition them, are going to be on grid power?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, you're hitting on one of the key challenges of all of this, right? So we talk a lot about electrification because we need to move away from fossil fuels. If we electrified everything tomorrow, if every vehicle was electrified, our fossil fuel consumption goes through the roof, right? And we end up pulling more off the grid and using dirtier energy than we use now. So part of that transition has to be kind of in conversation with our transition to more renewable energy, whether it's offshore wind, solar, potentially hydrogen. Some of these other technologies have to work to replace fossil fuels to make this successful. I think the numbers is basically our energy consumption will double based on the projections of electrification in the EMP. So we need to continue to accelerate renewable energy as we move forward. I think what's also important to note, you talk about kind of like there's a downside to everything, right? There is no perfect solution. Even an electric car is not the perfect solution. We have to continue to pursue all avenues of progress at the same time to find the right ones that are most beneficial for our planet. It may not all be electrification. That's where we're headed now. But as we look at other things, as we look at hydrogen, look at fuel cells, there may be other ways to do this that we need to continue to pursue and examine. And you know, as one of those takes the forefront, we continue to put our efforts there. But it's not one size fits all. As I said, if we cannot just replace every fossil fuel, every internal combustion engine with an electric car. That really doesn't get us very far, right? We need to find ways to reduce the amount of time we spend on roads, whether that's public transportation, whether that's work from home, whatever it is, we have to continue to focus on that as well to ultimately reduce our load. Yes, sir.
Hey, I heard you make some great points about involving low-income areas and overburdened communities, and I guess my question involves like how is DP kind of modeling or saying managing areas that could be kind of targeted first or by priority in a sense?
Sure,
like that?
absolutely, great question. So we're very fortunate that we live in a state that has a law that requires us to kind of identify, at least within the bounds of how the legislature has put forth, which is fairly consistent with what the rest of the country is doing, particularly EPA. The communities that are of most concern, those low income and communities of color, as they fit the definition of overburdened communities within our law, right? So what we do in that situation is we kind of use that as a guidepost and then work to prioritize and drive benefits to those communities. Given the, particularly in this work, the often limited funding we have, we are providing that funding almost exclusively to those communities to ensure that they get the first part of those benefits and don't get left behind as they have too often in the past, right? We also, through our future adoption, hopefully within the next couple of months, of the environmental justice rules. Those rules are going to serve to help to address localized impacts in a way that we've never been able to do before. And I hope that the combination of our continued focus on funding, and particularly prioritization of funding, as well as the benefits that we will see through the environmental justice regulations, will start to improve public health and environmental conditions in those communities so that there's less of them overall. That's the goal, right? The goal is to change the paradigm completely so that we don't have folks who are left behind and that everyone is put back on a level playing field. I won't say back because that might not be accurate. Thank you. Is that it? Yeah, let me go.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
In the earlier panel, when being told of the role of or the impact of the lack of a thank you. The earlier panel was discussing the impact of a lack of national policy on wind energy generally in the United States. And from your presentation, the New Jersey is obviously taking the lead, not only in word, but in deed, in terms of legislature, policy, workforce development, and so on. So I wanted to find out if so far there's any thought of similarly sort of leading the way in terms of initiating either the renewal or the creation of a robust and comprehensive national policy.
Yeah, so we're fortunate that we have a very supportive administration that's put a lot of effort and support around these things, and we've been able to, we talk about the way that we're trying to regionalize fisheries compensation as like one small example of being able to try to create groups that are more than just New Jersey, because we recognize that the benefits and impacts of offshore wind go beyond our shores, right? It's not like they don't respect the boundary lines drawn out in the ocean. So we have to continue to work as best we can to lead and try to bring our partners along. And when we have the opportunities, of course, we work with the federal government to try to develop those things. But with all of these, and we often take some criticism for what can New Jersey do to really affect emissions reductions? Like we're this tiny little state, and if we had cut off all of our power, what would it do? Well, we have to lead, right? Somebody has to lead. Somebody has to do this first. We have to continue to push till we create a tipping point where everyone's paying attention to this and we're moving. So we're going to continue to take every opportunity presented to us to push forward. And if it has to be alone, it'll be alone, but we hope more often than not it'll be with partners. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now we have the next panel coming, and our Associate Director, Aparna Verde, will introduce the moderator of the panel, Chuck Feinberg.